All right, welcome back to another episode of Asset Coach and Tax Strategist. If you're a subscriber, thanks so much for subscribing. If you're not, feel free to hit that little thumbs up to give us approval of the content. Hit the little bell to subscribe. Add any comments or suggestions of content in the comment section. So today's episode, we're going to just chat about inflation, chat about you and I as consumers, and what's this look like, and really kind of how inflation, in my opinion, has helped encourage the increase in consumerism, or the cost of consumerism, I should say, and what that leads to with consumer debt and spending and all that fun stuff. So let's just kind of dive right into it. We're going to go ahead and use an initial article from let's see here. Investopedia. High inflation is entering its fifth year. Now, I'm going to go ahead and shift this over to, I cut and paste the article into a Word document, just easier without having all these ads as a distraction. All right, high inflation entering its fifth year. This was published in January 13th, so just about a month ago from the time of this recording. So here's key takeaways. This is what I love about Investopedia. They give you some key takeaways and bullet points. Inflation is set to run above the Federal Reserve's 2% annual target. So if you watched any of our previous episodes, I went through Economic Termites, the book that I wrote, Economic Termites, and in the inflation video and content, we talked about the Federal Reserve's goal of 2% inflation. So if you understand the rule of 72, and you were to, let's see here, let me grab my little writing tool here. So if you had the rule of 72, so you have 72 and you divide 2% or whatever percentage it is into 72, that answer is how long it would take a dollar to double. Okay. Well, with inflation, this is a deterioration of a dollar, right? Your purchasing power reduces. So let's say you're 18, and let's just use simple math. You're 20, okay, and you're 20 years old, and you add 36 years, and let's just use the Fed's inflation of 2%, which we know it's not always going to be 2%. What's that age? Now you're 56. What are you preparing for? Retirement. You're getting close, right? You got about 10 years to where you're ready to retire. So if you had a dollar, it now is worth equals, now it's worth 50 cents. And each year, this deteriorates by that cost or that reduction of purchasing power. Okay. So it takes more dollars to be able to purchase the same goods and services. Okay. So this is the rule of 72. So this is really important when we look at this, is that if inflation's higher, our purchasing power is decreasing. It takes more of our dollars to buy the goods that we normally would buy to live our life. Okay. Now, high inflation has roiled the economy and household budgets since the U.S. began to recover from the pandemic in 2021. Inflation has fallen from its peak in 2022 when the COVID disruption of global supply chains drove inflation to a 4-decade high. So remember the 4-decade, where we were talking about like late 70s, early 80s, when the government actually said we had double-digit inflation. We all know that during this period of time we had double-digit inflation. The government just didn't report that. Problems with global supply chains were mainly responsible for recent inflation, and experts have warned tariff imposed on by incoming President Donald Trump. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think the media, and this is my opinion, right? All this stuff is my opinion, but I think this whole tariff stuff is becoming a buzzword to create some anxiety and anger and frustration in us, because there's really nothing else. Because what's Donald Trump doing? Everything he said he would, right? I mean, he's been in office, what, a little over a month, and the dude's just a workhorse. I don't know if he's been sleeping yet. So him and his administration have made a ton of actionable items and changes. Well, here's the thing. When we're looking at tariffs, Trump was right. Before we started charging, the government started charging you and I income taxes, we used to trade with other countries, and we would all charge tariffs, a tax on each other's goods and services. And that's how the country ran. And then all of a sudden, somebody got this bright idea. It's like, hey, you know what? Why don't we tax the people and their income? And all of a sudden, we got income taxes. Okay. And so now we've gotten so used to these taxes in this system, in this process, and decades over decades over decades, that now when we hear this tariff word, we're like, oh my goodness. But imagine, here, this is the interesting thing. So what Trump's saying, like it or not, what he's saying is that, hey, okay, if Mexico is charging us a 15% tariff on our goods and services, wouldn't it be fair if we charge them 15% also? Yeah. But what the media is saying and what a lot of Americans are saying, "Oh no, don't do that." Are you kidding me? If we're able to get 15%, what happens? What's that's a tax that goes to what? The whole pool of dollars, the tax dollars. Who's filling this pool? You. You're filling this pool with your taxes right now. That's it. But now we can have an additional funds filling this pool. Well, it's going to cause goods and services to go up. No, it will level out the supply chain and demand. It'll level it out because we're already paying for it because they're charging us 15%. So if we charge them 15%, guess what they're going to do? They're going to start lowering this. Therefore, we lower this. Or we trade this cost with, hey, instead of us charging you 15%, how about you spend that 15% on helping us secure the borders? How about we help spending this and start fighting the cartels and grow a pair and defend the borders just like we are? How about you not let people just walk through your country into ours? Okay. So this tariff conversation is meaningful to them, but we just don't understand it. So we create this fear and depending on the political bent of some of the economists, sure, could it cause a initial rift in our, of course, but hasn't everything? That's the whole thing is anytime the government makes decisions, there's always a rift in the system. The matrix flutters, right? So, all right. Post-pandemic bursts of high inflation, once called transitory. Yeah, I love that by Powell. That was such brilliant usage of language. Oh, yeah, it's transitory. Yeah, don't worry about it. Oh, okay. Oh, is this transitory? All right. He used a big word that we haven't heard in decades. All right. So, guess what? Isn't it always transitory? Isn't everything a transition? All right, maybe not. If economists' forecasts hold true, official inflation reports will show that consumer price index increases accelerated in December, carrying inflationary momentum into the new year. Fed officials expect their preferred inflation measures to average about 2.5% in 2025, which could mark half a decade above the target of 2%. Okay, let's see here. Let's go and see what that was. Yeah, those were just notes. So I just want to make sure we're not misspeaking here. The dubious milestone headlights highlights the profound impact that the surge of inflation that began in 21 has made on household budgets, the U.S. economy, and even presidential politics. An item priced at $100 in February would cost 2020. Okay, so 5 years ago, would cost $118 in November. If it followed the PCE inflation trend, again, note that's compared to about 108 if the inflation ran at 2%. So there's a 10% charge for just that high half percent, right? So this is huge. So it gives you an idea. So item price. So if you spend, okay, so let's do this. Let's do this math. Okay, I'm gonna grab my calculator and let's do this math. Okay, let's say you spend $5,000 a month. Okay, so that's 500 100s. Okay, so that's 5 times, right? So 118 That's $590 more a month in your expenses to live your lifestyle. So if you are already kind of on the edge, now granted, there are some items that were more expensive than others. So rent went up quite a bit. Certain food products went up quite a bit. Okay. Appliances really don't count because how often do we buy appliances on a monthly basis, right? We don't. Energy went up a little bit. Okay. How did inflation get here? Well, duh. Inflation surged in 21 as the economy began to recover from the onset of pandemic. No, what happened was the Fed dumped trillions of dollars into the marketplace. Okay. And that consumers, many flush with cash from pandemic relief programs, encountered shortages of stuff they wanted to buy. So all of a sudden we had all this money, but we didn't have enough product because areas of the country as well as the world shut down. So we had a huge demand. Okay. And that is what caused the inflation of those dollars. So as things started to settle down, what happened? There was some companies went out of business, some companies in the supply chain, some of the manufacturers, certain people in that process went out of business. They couldn't recover, and therefore we still had a demand that was high, but the supply wasn't keeping up with the demand. Okay. So now everything is kind of leveling out, so to speak, but still what's happening? What's happening is that the cost of food continues to rise. So there's certain areas where I do believe some corporations and companies have taken advantage of this process. They may be not charging $3 for a bag of chips and raised it to $5, but they definitely have changed the size of that bag of chips. And what they first did was left the bag the same, had less chips inside of it. So we got used to that. And then they're like, oh, after a while, they said, whoa, we changed the size. And so they shrunk the size of the bag to fit the amount of chips. So then we look at it and go, ooh, we got more chips. But we're still paying that $3 for that bag, and it's still less chips. So what's going to happen next is that bag is going to have less chips. You see this process, but we're getting conditioned in this process. Okay. And so this is a big deal. Making up excuses or these unusual farms and warehouses catching on fire that store food. There's a combustion and it caught on fire. Killing all these chickens because one chicken had bird flu, so let's kill them all. And so now all of a sudden we have a supply issue of eggs. And so you see this issue, and this is all forcing this inflationary number. Okay. So why am I talking about this? Because we need to understand that this eats away at our wealth. And so if we were to visualize, and this is I love this. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This a Visual Capitalist is a website that I used. I cut and paste this off. Visual Capitalist. So if you look at our housing costs, how Americans spend our money. So the majority of our money is spent on our house, which makes sense, or the roof over our head, right? Rent or whatever you want to call it. Okay. And then we have transportation, which makes sense. Insurance and pensions, healthcare, food away from home, so restaurants, entertainment. Then we have cash, so we save cash. Then clothing, education, miscellaneous, personal care products, alcohol beverages, tobacco, and then we don't spend a whole lot of reading. Now, here's the interesting thing. So this reading and education. Now, education is as like private school or education as university. I personally think an adult American should be reading at least one book a month, one new book a month. And the problem is that most of us don't. Once we leave high school or we leave college, we don't pick up another book again in our life, and that's about 80% of Americans. And what's wrong with that is that we're not becoming educated. We're not understanding and learning certain things. So when the government makes changes and adjustments to things, and they create these things, we don't know it, and we just fall in line. Okay, but by reading, that allows us to understand what's happening, what's going on, and it helps us to stay in touch with things, and we can make decisions. Now, why am I talking about this? How many of these things do you think go on a credit card? How many people put food on a credit card or gas transportation on a credit card, entertainment and restaurants on a credit card? How many people buy their clothing on a credit card? How many people go to personal care products and alcohol and tobacco and all this stuff on credit cards? Well, let's take a look. Let's look at the visualization of the US consumer debt. Okay. Now, here's the interesting. I'm going to get back to this student loan part. So let's go and look at right here. Okay, so credit card debt right here, 33% of the overall consumer debt is credit card debt. 66% of our costs is inflation. Did you hear that right? Percentage increase of consumer debt. 66% of it was caused by inflation. 80% mortgage, 91% auto. Look at the student loan debt. Has grown 5.3 times since 2003. By the way, who said that you and I as taxpayers should be backing student loan debt? Who said that if someone needs a student loan, so they need to get a loan to go get educated so they can get a better paying job, why is that our responsibility to back that debt as taxpayers? And that's what's happened. So everybody goes and gets this education, and how many people use this degree to go get a better educated job? And all of a sudden, you and I as taxpayers are footing that bill. Well, you can make the argument, okay? You can make the argument that they're part of the economy now, and they're getting a better paying job, and so more taxes are going to the government. So that's what's going to back up and support the debt. Well, why isn't the debt paid off? It's not. Right? And so the previous administration's like, well, let's pay it off and let's help people. No, 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 no. You chose to do that. You chose to get that degree. You chose not to use that degree in your profession. You chose to change your degree. I didn't. I didn't choose that for you. I didn't have a say in that. And so this drove the cost of university education up. And so these universities, nonprofit BS, they should be paying taxes. In fact, these universities not only should be paying taxes, their taxes should go directly to supporting that student loan debt. Not paying it off for students, but a fund to protect us taxpayers, because somehow, some way, we are being told that student loan debt we as taxpayers got to fix. No, I don't think so. In fact, you get a lifetime pretty much to pay this down. It's your responsibility. All your debt's your responsibility. You chose that. You chose to go down that pathway. Trust me, I get things happen in life. I'm not saying things don't happen in life and all, everything's hunky dory. But at the end of the day, there is personal responsibility. And shouldn't we take that in consideration? So, crazy how inflation has caused our the costs of debt and our spending go up. It's crazy how when we look at this, just over a 5-year period, the significant shift and things haven't gotten better, right? And so this is why the current administration is like, okay, we got to create some relief here. So that's why they're looking at government programs. So maybe there's less taxes going to and spending in these frivolous programs, sending money to other countries. And so maybe some of this tariff money will support us as taxpayers. Maybe some of the less spending of the government into these areas will bring our debt, will bring our budget items down into something that's more realistic. Seems fair, seems logical, seems like what we should be doing in our own home. Certainly, it's what businesses do. I run many businesses, and it's the same thing. Cash flow. What are your expenses? How are you going to control that? If you don't have enough cash flow to support your expenses or your marketing, you got to go find it. And that's where you get loans and utilize credit cards to help support that until your cash flow goes up. That's what the government's done. They just print money. They have the control of printing money. You and I don't. Well, we could, but that's a federal offense. Good luck with that. Not a game plan that you should probably go through. Anyways, so hopefully this was helpful. Give us a thumbs up if you like the content. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much. Make it a great day.